it's interesting to reflect back because there was a lot of mystery things showing up in the HIV diagnosis, and we were all on the same learning curve. The disease was fresh and new to the community relatively in 1986.
Well, in 1994, I had a 6-month-old baby girl. Her name was Katie, and she started to get sick.
At the time, it was like, well, we're diagnosing you with being HIV positive. You probably have 10 years.
She became worse and worse, and eventually was diagnosed with pneumonia.
So I didn't have any support. I was not out with my HIV diagnosis in my work community.
And they put her into ICU, intensive care, at Children's Hospital, and started to test to find the cause of the pneumonia.
I'd lost my partner to AIDS in January. This was February, March, so it was like recent history that, you know, my mate of 5 years that we were fighting this together had died.
About a week later, they let me know that she actually had been found to have HIV, but they needed to test her again.
I had a very invasive strain of Kaposi sarcoma because I only had 20 T cells, and I didn't really have an immune system.
Well, we've got good news and bad news. And they said that my husband wasn't infected, but that I was and Katie was.
My body was completely destroyed. I mean, I had radiation burns all over my face and my ears, and my eye was shut from a lesion there. I looked frightening. I weighed 130 pounds.
Then I had to start giving her morphine every 2 hours because she was in such a lot of pain, and she stopped eating. She died August 31st, 1994. At 9:30 at night. I was so glad she died because she was in such a great amount of pain. And I would never wish that on anybody. I didn't really even think about myself. I thought, you know, I just hope I die somehow too, very soon, because I want to be with her.
I was in the cancer clinic. They have a ward there for palliative. And I was there kind of in the final throes of thinking that's where I was going to spend my last few days.
It was incredibly depressing. And I started to drive my car without a seatbelt.
The doctor came in and said, oh, we're going to give you compassionate access to a new medication that hasn't been released yet, but it's coming on stream in the next 6 months.
Soon, actually, afterwards, I realized that this was a disease that could infect anybody.
I think it was like a week later, they said, we're going to release you. You're actually on the way back. And it was like, wow, okay. Photographs of current and past board of directors for Positive Living over the years. From here down, these board of directors, many of them are deceased. They were the years where the HIV positive board of directors.
And that's the beauty of Positive Living, actually, is that Positive Living is an organization where all the board and a lot of the people there know exactly what it's like to be living with HIV. When you go in there, you're going to meet other people with HIV. And what it means for me is, like when I'm on a bus and I'm talking to somebody about HIV, I've got my voice really quiet because I don't want people to know I've got HIV. If I go into Positive Living, I can talk normally.
Okay, so here's a poster of the various services that are offered through the wellness clinic. Acupuncture, massage therapy, naturopathic, reflexology, which I just had, Tai Chi, yoga massage, therapeutic touch, and yoga therapy.
I think it's just a place they can go where they feel loved, actually, and for who they are, not what they have. That's important. That's really important.
At the time, there was a lot of negative hype about HIV and, the plague.
Positive living was all encompassing. It wasn't just for one group, and that's what I wanted to be in. I wanted to be in with everyone.
There was talk in our own province of maybe quarantining people with HIV on some sort of a Gulf island.
Well, when I came, I took a time off from Positive Living, time off. I was always a member, but I didn't need the services like I did before.
I needed some sort of community connection and support to get through the experience of living with HIV.
And I thought, well, this organization helped me when I was at my lowest. And I feel that I should be there for them now.
Many of the people accessing services in all sorts of different health statuses were volunteering, including myself.
Just because you don't need the services doesn't mean you can't be a volunteer or you can't give in some way.
Empathy and compassion and understanding of the virus and its impact on the gay community, primarily at the time, was most supported through being involved in an organization that was comprised of those same people.
What would happen if Positive Living didn't exist? I think there'd be a lot of lonely people who are suffering with this illness. Positive Living was there for people when other people weren't there. Positive Living is helping people who have more than HIV. There is this fallacy out there that it's cured. It's not cured. It's incredibly difficult to live with. And I guess it's because there's nobody talking about it.
I was so grateful back in the 80s that I lived here in Vancouver and there was an organization for me to connect to that was going to kind of mentor me and support me through my own journey with HIV. We're living in a time now where the funding from the provincial and federal governments are being pulled back because there is this, there's medication now for HIV. But on the flip side is there's more people living with HIV now than there ever has been in the history of HIV.
I mean, you can be generous with your time, but to be generous and help people out who you don't even know, who nobody else cares about.
They're supporting so many people that wouldn't have another place to go.
Because people aren't dying with the disease, there's more people who have the disease. There's more people who are looking for ways to cope.
Okay, we need to step up now as a community to support this organization at a time where government funding is being pulled back.
I have an obligation to Katie. I didn't purposely infect her, but I infected her. So I always think of Katie as my reason. However, I know many women who've died of HIV, and I feel so bad that they aren't here today. I know some people who've died of suicide since. I don't want them ever to get to that stage where there's no hope anymore. That's important.
I was always hopeful that I would be an exception to the rule. And I did. I truly believed that in 1986. And here I am 33 years later. So, if hope played a role in why I became a survivor and didn't pass away earlier, I'll take it. I'll own it. It's like, yeah.